Welcome to Disrupted Science, the occasional conversation between the authors of the upcoming book, How the Internet Disrupted Science. I'm Joy Moore, here with my co-author, Kent Anderson, and we're recording this on Thursday, July 10th, 2025. Hey, Kent.
Hey Joy, how are you?
Pretty good. So our calendars are pretty chock-a-block this week, and we weren't even planning on recording a regular episode. But lo and behold, Bhattacharya gave us something to talk about. And by George, we found the time. So we put this together pretty quickly, and we're going to try and keep it brief, but there's some important points that we want to talk about. And so we're going to give our 2 cents on some news items first. We've got a book update. Then we're going to dive into MAHA and the NIH disrupting publishing, and then leave you with a couple of quick discoveries that will hopefully lighten the mood if possible.
Yeah, yeah. Heavy times, that's for sure. This is not what I expected to do this summer. But
Yeah.
so shall we dive into news updates?
Yeah, let's kick it off with some of the highlights from this week.
Sounds great. Okay, so I'll dive in first. One of the highlights this week for me was a number of societies suing the Department of HHS and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. over vaccine policy decisions that they say were made in violation of standard scientific processes, established CDC and HHS policies and practices, and were therefore illegal. And I think they have a good chance of success, even though right now so many courts are feeling the pressure to align with the executive branch. But even if they don't succeed, I think the de facto pressure is important because it separates them from this weird, strange, non-scientific approach to establishing medical policy. But it also gives insurers room, and which they are taking advantage of, it seems, to reassure people that they're going to pay for vaccinations, routine vaccinations. They're going to cover those, and
Mm-hmm.
they're going to more or less abide by the recommendations of these other bodies. So even having this lawsuit in play, I think helps everybody, gives everybody cloud cover to do what they know is right.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it succeeds legally or not, I hope it does, but it at least gives us space to get through the cold and flu and COVID season in better shape.
Yeah, and hopefully it sends a strong message to the public that there are these big organizations supporting their doctors, and so they're not on their own in this. And if they win, that shows the success of these organizations, and if they lose, it shows what a small minority of physicians are doing to the rest of to the country.
Yeah, and to your point, I think is really important, and we'll probably get to this in the later coverage. Of just the showing that you're willing to stand up for what you believe in is important. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, there was an article published in Science June 25th about this year's NSF Graduate Research Fellowship Program. And this year's cohort included 0 life science researchers. So this is an article by Jeffrey Maris called Prestigious NSF Graduate Fellowship Tilt Towards AI and Quantum. And it was just so blatant. It was remarkable. They had over 60% of the recipients were in computer science, and then all the way down the line to 0 life sciences. And NSF has been historically very heavy on the life sciences, needless to say. And so we're talking about 500 positions, and they are given $37,500 a year over 3 years. So that's $112,000 per recipient, to a total of $56 billion, which is pennies. And there's a long history of these folks going on to be Nobel Prize winners. And really, these are the overachievers that deserve this honor. It's more about the honor than the funding itself. And it's just really making a mockery of the institution SF. I mean, last week we were talking about them getting kicked out of their building to make space for, um, you know, gyms and private elevators. Um, and this is it's just beyond. And then as I was thinking about it a little bit more, maybe these life science researchers who had been finalists dodged a bullet. Because can you imagine if they had shown up, what that orientation would have looked like? Right?
Yeah.
we've got we've got, the computer scientists at the top of the list. They're the superstars. You guys, go get in the server room. Hope you packed a parka because it's cold in there, and get hacking. And then
Exactly.
and then you go down the list. You've got materials scientists, physics, astronomy, chemistry, engineering, geosciences, and math. We need to get to outer space.
Right.
You guys are our group. And then we've got social sciences and psychology, brainwashing techniques, this is their mission. And then the life sciences folks, what are they going to ask them to do that they're going to actually approve?
Right.
Not that they should be asking them to do anything, but
Right.
that's how things roll. I mean, go figure out how to, reduce the population before they can apply for Medicaid. I mean, I can't imagine how the results of the research by these, proven brilliant folks would be supported in the way that they deserve to be. So,
Right. So you have a bunch of misanthropes running NSF grant making now with this
yeah,
administration. So of course they kicked the life sciences to the curb. And like you said, if the life sciences people had gotten grants, then they'd be having to deal with the attitudes of a bunch of misanthropes,
yeah,
people who just don't like people.
they don't like people. But then I also had to worry about the winners, the computer science kids, right? They're the cream of the crop there. And what are they going to do living on 112,000 over 3 years when they could be working for Zuckerberg or Altman or, Microsoft or those guys? I mean, Zuckerberg's floating comp packages guaranteeing 100 million in year one and 300 million over 4 years.
Right.
What is this handful of computer scientists going to do for the government?
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Yep. It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one other last little news item, we had a kind of, this is all about kind of the turn of the tail, right? So a plot twist in the science sleuth world is that now the sleuths, who we commend and we're part of it, are complaining that their work is being used for nefarious purposes and being used for anti-science agendas, according to a July 9th Nature News article. And no surprise in a way, right? So we abdicated a lot of our job, in my opinion, and opened ourselves up for this kind of sleuthing behavior being so spotlighted. And Retraction Watch and other places have done, kind of, if it bleeds, it leads reporting about what's going on in scientific publishing. And I don't know that that's necessarily helped anything. And they've gone to the public with it too. It's not like the geyser where you kind of have to want to pay for it or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's free, they get grants and all of that. So all of that kind of bundled up makes it so that people who are driving by and they see that this scientific publishing industry is in a kind of a dire straits and can be easily, redirected to suit their purposes, they're like, oh, well, that's easy pickings, you know.
Yeah,
And we've got all these people. I quipped to you earlier, we celebrate these people because you noted that we celebrate these sleuths. But imagine if Purdue Chicken celebrated the food inspector who caught salmonella in
Right.
a plant, it would be, no, you fix the problem. You don't, that's why the inspectors are there,
Hmm.
not to advertise that, there was a problem on an assembly line, and you had to stop production and fix something. Um, so, we've kind of been show ponies instead of workhorses, and I think this is finally coming back to bite us. And promoting kind of self-loathing and promoting, airing of dirty laundry and transparency at all costs and all of that. And it leads journalism about what's going on in scientific publishing. I don't think any of those things are what normal professional groups do
Yeah.
in kind of to keep their professional stature in the world. So I think it's, here it is, folks. It happened, and we own it. We have to own it, my opinion.
Yeah, it's almost like it's being, by not talking about it, it's equating it to pharma company cover-ups, and they are
Right.
not at all equivalent. And this inside baseball should stay inside baseball, and it's
Yeah. I mean, we keep
between.
we keep secret. I mean, as having been in publishing for a long time, we keep a lot of secrets for people out of respect and then also out of professional respect, right? One of them is we don't tell you which papers you're seeing today were rejected by our journals 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We keep your secrets because we don't want the scientists to lose face that this was rejected by 9 other publishers.
Hmm.
Um, and we keep those kinds of things. We if somebody messes up and lies on a disclosure form and we have to go back to them 3 times to have them fix it, to kind of gently hint we don't air that dirty laundry. And part of that is to keep everybody's reputation as an industry. And some people don't like us to talk about ourselves as an industry, but we are. We're a profession and a trade. We should deal with our own things. We don't have to celebrate the food inspectors finding salmonella. There's just no upside to it. So I think, again, this is kind of, you know, all of a sudden people are targeting us and they want to come after us. And this is just really rich, fertile ground. And so it's not a surprise. Um, we kind of have to own it. So I think that's the news for this week. A few things to touch on and comment on.
Hmm. I don't think we need to do a special rant section today, Kent, because we've got a big topic to cover. Let's get into the latest, totally predictable, yet still remarkably crazy policy coming out of our country's National Institutes of Health. So,
Yes. Yeah. So came
what
across
happened?
this. Yeah. So Charlie Kirk, who I've never seen Charlie Kirk.
Oh, you're so
Um,
lucky.
I know I've been so fortunate up to this point. I've never
I
seen
have
Jay
to admit,
Bhattacharya
I haven't
speaking.
I haven't watched the video. I couldn't do
Oh,
it.
well, okay, then we're coming clean. We're coming clean here,
You took
folks.
one for the team.
I did, and I'll
My
tell you,
algorithm is already messed up enough as it is with Joe Rogan. I don't need to add him to that.
it was excruciating. But in any event, so there's a video of the interview. I posted it on the Geyser earlier, and it's basically Charlie Kirk giving Jay Bhattacharya free rein to talk about what's driving this announcement, a shot across the bow, that they're going to have a plan to limit OA APC payments. And it revealed some of the things that you kind of sniffed out in the first one, the published one that they did, which again, some people have noted is strange that it's coming from the NIH and it's not coming from OSTP, which is usually the body that handles these things. So it seems as rogue as anything in this administration. But the announcement is they're going to, they're complaining about any number of things, the high APCs, subscription costs, elite journals, how taxpayers are paying for the research, and then the authors are being charged to publish, and things of that nature. Old things that we've heard, but it's got this weird new twist on it because they targeted Springer Nature specifically in this. Bhattacharya really pointed it out. You could kind of sniff it out in the press release, but he really calls it out here, and explicitly. He says Springer Nature is one of the bad actors, right? And then Charlie Kirk weighs in and says, aren't they a foreign company? Which is another thing that came up, I think, in April when some of the Breitbart kind of people went after scientific publishers on the heels of the Ed Martin letters. We were talking about how these foreigners were, were charging us Americans for all this American science.
I dare them to find the Netherlands on a map.
I know, no kidding. So, yeah, and
I
then
know Springer Nature isn't the Netherlands.
well, we know who you're talking about. It's orange, like the Netherlands. Favorite color. But anyhow, so they go into this and they're complaining about everything. And the weirdest twist of logic was, or illogic, was Bhattacharya saying that the public had paid for the research and then they were being charged to publish it. So that was double dipping, meaning that what? So it makes no sense, right? So he's using a term that he's probably come across in his little crazy wired brain, where publishers are complaining, or librarians, or whoever was complaining about publishers with OA and hybrid and subscription journals double dipping, and how publishers were dealing with double dipping and all of that. So he picked up that term and applied it to the fact that, complaining about publishers charging authors or charging institutions or funders or whoever. And so misapplied it completely, but also it's illogical because the publishers haven't charged anybody anything until they charged to publish a report. That's one dipping. That's one dip. That's all it is. And the reason that he doesn't understand why these things are expensive, right? Especially for a journal like Nature, which he calls out specifically. It's $13,000 APC. First of all, one thing to remind everybody of is that journals at that tier, not all of them charge APCs. Not all of them participate in open access. Some of them don't. But Nature and Lancet, I think, were two that finally capitulated after warning people that their APCs were going to be super high because they're super selective. And what that means is that all of their selection, which means rejection of other papers, has to be covered by a commensurate charge for the single paper that gets through. And so you're actually paying for rejection and selectivity. So you're paying for the stature of that publication, which is what everybody's after.
And you did a really good job on that this morning, overnight, watching this video and spelling it out in your post in the Geyser this morning. And there are just so many things wrong about this whole proclamation, that it's painful to talk about, but we should. And you and I are in the position where we can talk about things specifically that other folks in our industry either can't or won't for, all various and probably good reasons. Right. So I figured we'd split this conversation into 3 parts. Okay.
Yep.
Maybe for sanity's sake.
I need as much as I can get.
Yeah. So first, I think let's not bury the lead. Let's talk about what they're really doing, and why that's all that matters. Separate that out from the specifics, the evidence they present, and all the rest. So first, let's start with what's really going on here and why that matters. And then second, we can talk about a few parts of their argument that are worth addressing here. And again, if you want to read what Kent wrote yesterday, if you haven't, or today, if you haven't, please do. And then I think we should reserve some time to make our own predictions about what this might result in terms of the publishing community. That sound
Yeah.
good?
Yep. That sounds good. So what I think they're really up to is they're um, trying to portray publishers as greedy, rapacious, foreign, unnecessary, undemocratic, so on and so forth, elite, using all these words that their base identifies with, and they try to use to paint everybody else with to tar everybody else. And I think the reason they're doing that is they want to, and RFK Jr. hinted at this back in an interview in April, they want to start government-run journals. They want to run their own journals economy, and they want to decide who is in and who is out and who is qualified and who is not. This way, they would eliminate taxpayer-funded double dipping because the taxpayers would be funding everything. It would be, in their view, democratic because they are democratically elected and appointed people, and they would be running the journals. Therefore, it's democratic. It would shut out the foreigners, so their jingoism would be rewarded and observed, and it would be all run by Americans. And there you go. And we would get rid of APCs. It would hurt independent publishers. The elite journals would be shown, who's really in charge here, and given the middle finger essentially. And I think that's what they're concocting here, and I think that's why they're twisting words and twisting concepts painfully in order to get to the point where they can say, this has to be more democratic. Taxpayers shouldn't have to pay foreign publishers, so on and so forth. So I think that's what they're up to, and I think it's going to be a matter of, you know, probably 6 to 12 months before they actually trot a journal out. One thing that struck me, and this, the journal that Bhattacharya started right before he was appointed NIH has a weird model to it, which I think hints to this mindset, which is you can publish in it at no charge if you are viewed as a loyal member of their group.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a loyalty test aspect to this as well. And that's probably was a little bit of a trial balloon in a way. It gives you some insight into how they think and how they work. And I think that's where they're headed too, is that the people who will be inside the NIH and who will be evaluating and allowed to publish and getting grants and all of that will be loyalists at some level. They will be people who will, be in the vaccine community and all of that. So I think that's where they're headed.
Mm-hmm.
And, this was painful to watch. I have to tell you, at some point toward the end, I'll tell you a little bit about one of the observations I had about Charlie Kirk, because it was glaring. And since you didn't watch it, I got to give you a laugh. Um, but yeah, so that's what I think they're doing and why it really matters, because it's going to isolate American science and scientists and create a lot of havoc for indexing services. I think PubMed Central, PubMed, Medline, and all of those things are in for a really rough ride and maybe actually delegitimized before we know it. So we'll have to find out.
Mm-hmm. And it's a kind of twofer assault on both academic freedom and freedom of the press when you think
Right.
about it.
Yep.
Because limiting publication options also limits who you can collaborate with. And not all NIH funded papers have all authors who are funded by the NIH. In fact, most of them have multiple authors from different institutions and different funders.
Right.
So that's isolating their scientists from collaborating,
Right.
and then also clearly limiting where they can publish
Yep.
and what they can publish.
Yep.
So there's a few things around what's wrong with their argument that I think are worth spending a few minutes on.
Yep.
The first point, and I guess it ties in maybe to their strategy if they realize it or not. But author fees for publishing is when you create information and you pay somebody else to make that information free of charge to at no cost, free of charge to anybody that you can reach with it um, who didn't ask for it, then that's called advertising.
Hmm.
The Postmaster General knows this, the FCC knows this. They wouldn't be able to do this if they were to say that every American should receive a print copy of every article that
Right.
was NIH funded. You wouldn't be able to
Right.
do that through the mail.
Well,
Or
you could. You
you
just have
could,
to
but it
pay
would be,
advertising rates, which are
yes, it
higher.
would be very expensive.
Right.
And so what open access author paid publishing is in science is really the cheapest media buy on the planet, because you're able to get a really quality brands like Springer Nature to not only make your message stronger, but also to package it on a platform that can amplify it. And so what they're really asking for are Madison Avenue type advertising services, but is capping what they're willing to pay for it at Craigslist.
Hmm.
Um, if you are taking the position that they are going to still want to participate with publishers at all, taking them at their word and not just, like you said, just starting their own journals altogether, this is what they're doing.
Hmm.
And so that has a lot of problems with it. And unfortunately, for journals like, particularly for the nature journals, the quality that goes into the editing, the production, but also the distribution and the people that they reach,
Well, and the
you
brand affiliation.
the brand affiliation.
Yep.
Frankly, you can't put a price tag on that. But unfortunately, they did when they went hybrid and open access for some of those older, more established journals. And
Yep.
so once you put that price out there, then it's open to negotiation, apparently.
Yep.
Um, so that's, I think, one of the first things that's really wrong with their argument. And then the ideology that it's based on, like you said, usually this comes through the OSTP, which reports into the executive branch through memos. And the notion that taxpayers are entitled to this is something that has just gained steam over the years and has really been selectively applied to this
Hmm.
content and this industry. We don't
Hmm.
see evidence of this elsewhere
Yep.
with government funded research and services. And
Yep.
so that's just been accepted and unfortunately, probably well meaningly, has been put into as a norm through the executive offices. And this is one Biden holdover that they were more than happy to just cross his name out and put theirs on top.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think one of the things that we discussed was, how Spark especially moved into the MAGA space very quickly once the election was over. They
yeah.
self-censored their website. They took all DEI talk down, stopped even talking about justice. They just really pivoted. Then they hired a MAGA associated lobbyist to consult with them. And then they either left of their own volition or got kicked out of New Venture Fund, which is a liberal leaning dark money lobbying firm and political group. And lo and behold, here comes this policy with, I'm sure, Spark people still having access to these folks. So, this is, one of the things that people have been afraid of is it's OA at all costs. We don't
Mhm.
care if we have to burn everything down to have open access. And I think we're getting to the point where if Spark was involved in this at all, and I don't have direct evidence they were, I only have circumstantial evidence that they might have been. But no matter, this is that extreme potentially.
Yeah, this is ideology gone rampant. It's like voting Republican because you believe in the right to life.
Right,
And you blur your eyes because nothing else is important as this one tenet that you hold so dear.
right. And
And
in the video, Bhattacharya goes on it, with great sort of faux passion about how important this information is to get to the public and so on and so forth. And I can tell you, I would bet that he doesn't interact with the public that often. Um, Based on his demeanor, I don't think that he's really out at, picnics or summer concerts or bars or Lowe's or, I don't think he's shopping at Walmart on Saturday afternoon trying to get stuff done. I just
now
don't see it.
he's having awkward beers with JD Vance.
Oh, yeah, I know. But in any event, I just, it's all facade, it's all performance, it's all theater. They're driving narratives. It's all a plan. I think we all have to interpret this as part of a plan. They aren't doing things based on evidence. They aren't doing things based on fact or knowledge or expertise or anything like that. So they're just taking whatever they can grab because they want to dismantle whatever they can dismantle in order to reassemble things in their own favor. And I think that's that's exactly what's motivating it. So
Mhm. And it completely undermines all the good faith efforts that people in publishing have had over the years trying to collaborate, trying to compromise in order to support something that they thought was in the interest of scientists. And that really sucks.
yeah, well, it gets back to you don't negotiate with terrorists, right? So
Hmm.
there you go.
Yeah.
So
And then,
I'll make a couple of predictions if that's
yeah.
okay. That we okay to move on to that
Hmm.
element. So my prediction is bifurcated. So I think it's binary. I think either publishers are going to capitulate to this price, um, whatever pricing
Fixing,
demands huh?
price fixing.
Yeah, it's a price fixing by the government. I think they're going to capitulate and either try to and probably try to ride it out. I think there's just too much cynicism among publishing leadership to have them actually, kind of just say, well, the heck with you, go pound sand. You're not getting our stuff for cheap. Um, I think we've had too much of a history of accommodation, like you just alluded to, where we just say, well, we'll just try to, play by their rules for a little while longer, and look where it's gotten us, right? So that's why it bifurcates. I think either we continue that very damaging and destructive and counterproductive trend that has gotten us to this point, or maybe this is the point where we finally say, all right, that's enough. That's
Hmm.
enough. You don't want to pay full price, you don't have to, but
Yeah.
that's the price.
That's always been the case. Nobody has to. There's
Yeah.
plenty of there's plenty of journals to choose from these
Nobody
days.
had to do Plan S.
No, no.
Nobody had to do it. Zero people had to do it. If those funders had left authors stranded out on, with no place to go,
Hmm.
that would have collapsed like a, cheap tent.
Yeah.
But everybody capitulated again. So my hope is that this is kind of the no, 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 no. And I take the lesson from the medical societies, right? I
Hmm.
mean, if you're not tougher than pediatricians, and believe me, I've worked with pediatricians, they are nice until you start talking about hurting children, and then they will get you. And I love them for that. I love you all for that because you're amazing. It's the same with emergency doctors, nicest people in the world until they see somebody hurt, and then
Yeah.
they will move heaven and earth for you. What are we willing to move heaven and earth to preserve? What are
Hmm.
we willing to move heaven and earth to protect? My question.
I think you're right. And I think there's going to be some attempts to negotiate, which I think is going to be a negotiation to the bottom.
Hmm.
Um, and it's going to bring everybody down, and it's going to waste a lot of time. And again, we're not talking about huge volumes of papers. We're in reality, um, and this is a distraction from a lot of good work that publishers need to be doing as well. So I hope it doesn't um, continue to skew things in the wrong direction, because it's such a high priority, high hot topic right now.
Well, plus you give this group a win. I mean, that's the last thing you want to do.
Then you're a real loser.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, well, we'll watch this space and see what happens next. We'd love to hear from folks out there who have opinions and other points of view. And if there are other things on this topic in particular you want to learn more about, like I said, Kent's chronicled the whole history back to the beginning, pretty much, of the different mandates in the geyser. So that's a great resource. Um, and then we'll be filling you in on whatever happens next.
Great. Do you want to do a book update quick?
Oh, yeah, I forgot to do the book update. We had an invitation to be guests on a podcast, and we recorded that the other day. We had a great time. It was a really good discussion.
Hmm.
The host was excellent, and the questions were really thought provoking. So we're really looking forward to that when it airs, so to speak. And we'll let you know when it's ready to come out. We don't know quite when, but I hope it's soon.
Absolutely.
So a lot of topics that are either directly related to the book or around the types of things that we're talking about today. So it's pretty timely.
Yep.
Okay, so and then we do have a couple of hopefully lighthearted uh, discoveries of the week.
There we go. Let's do our discoveries of the week.
So my discovery of the week is that the free app that my pickleball league uses is terrible, because so it's a round robin and it generates the teams and then it spews out the rankings. And last week, after our tournament, somebody sent out the rankings, and I was pleased to see that I was not the last. I was the fifth from the last, which was good because I've only been playing for a few weeks. But then I realized that the people that I was better than dropped out weeks ago.
Uh,
And so that wasn't fair. And also, I had some questions for the pro who runs the league about this app and how this algorithm works, and what are the metrics, and how does this score have anything to do with force ranking based on things like that. And so he said, well, it's not very good, but it was free. So that's what you get. You get
there you go. Get what
you
you
get
paid for.
free biased algorithms.
Well, that's no fun. It's no fun.
It did
Uh,
it did inspire me to practice more. So
well,
I
good,
guess
good.
that's good.
And you're enjoying it, right?
I am enjoying it.
Yeah.
What's your
Uh,
discovery?
My discovery is a 90-minute animated film from the studio that gave us Into the Spider-Verse, which is amazing, called K-pop Demon Hunters,
Oh,
which is a sentence that doesn't make sense until you see the movie, and then you realize that it's a really cool concept. So the idea is that there's a universal um, trio of singers who are always keeping demons at bay with the power of music. And these days they're doing K-pop because that's the most powerful popular music around. And if they ever fall, so it's like the who was Diana Ross and the Supremes, all these trios that go back, the
Mm.
Andrews sisters, all of these groups, girl groups that have kept the demons at bay. And so the demon decides he's going to finally unseat them with a boy band.
Oh.
Yeah, but the girls they slay demons. They can sense when demons appear, and then the boy band shows up, and there's all sorts of havoc breaks loose, and it's great fun to watch. The animation's fantastic. The music's good. The story has surprises and twists and turns. It's satisfying. Action's good. I mean, there's just nothing wrong with it. And I was so shocked because I heard people, reviewers I trust were talking about it. And I'm like, there's no way that's any good. I'd seen the first ad and I'm like, that's just weird. And then I watched it. It's 90 minutes long. So it's perfect size. It's not the 3 hour and 15-minute Oppenheimer that tests your bladder, but it's, a comfortable watch and totally satisfying from end to end. I mean, it begins fast, it goes fast, it ends with a snap and very satisfying ending. So, K-pop Demon Hunters, people,
Good one.
it was a discovery of the week for me.
That sounds like a good summer movie too.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was just escapism and fun you know, and days like this, it's 90 minutes of escapism can really refresh the soul. So,
Definitely. All right, well, that'll do it. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And as always, let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at disruptedscience@gmail.com, or you can get in touch with us other ways if you know how to reach us. And now it's
yep.
time for the sign off of the
The
week.
silly sign off of the week. Mine's
Silly
going
sign
to
off.
be, well, I'm going to invite you to join me in this one because I've been teaching Taylor Swift camp all week at
Okay.
School of Rock. So, Joy, let's just shake it off.
Shake it off.
Shake it off. Shake it off.
That's
Bye,
the
everybody.
perfect sign off for today. Thanks, Ken.
I see ya.